Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into the nitty-gritty, the fundamental building blocks of graphic design.
Yeah, we've got some excellent material here that lays out these core concepts.
And understanding this stuff, it's not just for designers, is it?
Not at all. It genuinely changes how all of us really perceive visual information every single day. You might be surprised by what's going on behind the scenes of things you see constantly.
Okay, so our mission here is to basically unpack these essential elements and principles from our sources. We will make them clear, engaging, and hopefully pretty memorable for you.
Sounds like a plan. Where should we start? The elements.
Let's do it. Our source material kind of breaks them down neatly into basic, relational, and intentional elements. Let's kick off with the basics.
Right, the absolute fundamentals, starting with the point.
The point.
Yeah.
Abstractly, it's this idea with no dimensions, no length, no breadth.
But in design, it immediately becomes something visual, right? A dot.
Exactly, a dot. It marks a position, maybe the start or end of a line or where lines cross.
So even though it represents that abstract point, the dot we actually see has a size. It gives the abstract idea a sort of visual reality.
And here's a cool idea from the source. Think about a bird flying away. You see its shape, then it gets smaller, and eventually it just looks like a dot, right?
Yeah, totally.
But that dot, it still represents the bird. It's like the shape reduced right down to the limit of recognition.
That's a fantastic point. It shows how context and our perception really define even the simplest element. A dot in design could technically be any tiny shape.
Okay, so from the point, we naturally get to the line. Abstractly, again, just length, no width.
But graphically, it's often called a dot gone for a walk.
Ah, I like that. A point in motion.
Yeah.
And crucially, unlike the abstract idea, design lines do have width. They can be thick or thin.
And that thickness matters visually. Thick lines feel, well, heavier, don't they? More substantial.
Yeah, definitely. And thin lines seem lighter, more delicate.
But lines do more than just show weight. They convey feeling, emotion.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Like straight horizontal lines often feel calm, stable,
Yeah.
like the horizon.
Exactly. And vertical lines, they feel more dynamic, reaching upwards. Think skyscrapers?
Right. Then inclined lines, they can feel a bit unstable.
Or they could suggest growth, maybe decline. It really depends on the context around them.
True. And curved lines give you that sense of rhythm, flow.
While zigzags can feel quite harsh, energetic, our source even mentions decorative lines, like in Indian traditions.
And grouping lines together just amplifies their effect. So lines aren't just dividers, they really communicate.
Absolutely.
Okay, next up from lines is the plane.
Right, the plane. Two-dimensional. Length and breadth, but no depth. Flat surface. Pretty straightforward.
Yep, and following that, we have space.
Now, mathematically, space is this, infinite 3D thing.
But in graphic design, it's about how we represent space within the limits of the composition, usually on a 2D surface.
And designers get clever here, using lines, colors, forms to create that illusion of 3D space, of volume. Right. It's not just physical space either. You can represent conceptual space, sort of mental space, too.
Like creating depth where there isn't any physically.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to shape.
Shape is basically the outline, the contour of a 2D form. Or you could think of it as the skeleton of a 3D form.
Like the initial outline you draw.
Exactly. Which leads us nicely into form. And form has a couple of key meanings here.
Okay.
So first, as a basic element, form is like a meaningful shape. It's a shape that's been given something more color, texture, shading.
Or even just its position relative to other things.
Right. That's what starts to give it that feeling of 3 dimensions. A simple circle is a shape.
But shade it like a sphere, and it becomes a form. It feels volumetric.
Precisely. But form can also mean the whole composition, the overall visual impact.
Okay. So the big picture.
Yeah. When the entire design feels meaningful, that's the cumulative effect of all the elements and how they're arranged.
And that meaningful form, whether a single part or the whole thing, creates a psychological response, right? Moods, feelings.
Exactly. And unique, recognizable forms stick in our memory.
And our source makes this really interesting point about text.
Oh, yeah.
That written text, like typefaces, is also a visual form in design.
Absolutely. The linguistic meaning and the visual treatment, they should ideally work together for maximum impact. It's not just what you say, but how it looks.
Makes sense. Okay, we can't really talk visual impact without getting into color.
Definitely not. It's fundamental. Maybe the most effective element for visual perception.
It just hits you. It has these key properties.
Yeah.
Hue, luminosity, and value.
But before we jump into those, maybe quickly mention grayscale.
Good idea. So grayscale is just that ordered range from pure white to pure black with all the gray tones in between.
And those tones are just mixtures of black and white. Gray is an equal mix. Add more white, you get a tint. Add more black, you get a shade.
Right. Understanding that helps with value and color.
Yeah.
So back to color properties. Hue.
Hue is the basic identity of the color. The redness of red, the blueness of blue. It's what lets us tell colors apart.
Got it. And value.
Value is how light or dark that hue is, compared back to that grayscale.
So a light pink versus a deep maroon, different values of red.
Exactly. Then there's luminosity.
Which is brightness, freshness.
Yeah, basically. The purest version of a hue is the most luminous. As soon as you mix it with anything black, white, another color, you start to reduce that brightness. Designers often try hard to preserve it.
Keep things vibrant. Okay, last basic element, texture.
Texture, it's that surface quality that creates a feeling of touch, even visually.
So it can be simulated, like making something look rough or smooth.
Right, that's simulated or implied texture. Or it can be real texture, something you could actually feel if you touched the design.
And designers use both.
Often, yeah. Or combine them. Texture adds the subtle layer, enhances mood.
Okay, wow. Those are the basic building blocks. But how they relate to each other. That's the next level, right? The relational elements.
Exactly. These govern the placement and interaction of the basic elements. First is alignment.
Just lining things up, vertical, horizontal, diagonal.
Pretty much. It creates order, a connection between elements. Then there's direction.
Which is about guiding the eye.
Yeah. How elements are arranged, maybe parallel, maybe angled to lead the viewer. It's always relative to the observer, the frame, or other forms.
And that leads to visual thrust.
Right. That's the momentum the arrangement creates, pulling your eye along a specific path. Directional elements really drive this.
Okay, then figure and ground. This one's important.
Crucial. It's the interplay between the main elements, the figure or positive space, and the background, the ground or negative space.
Like a silhouette being defined by the space around it.
Exactly. That relationship is key for clarity. And lastly, for relational elements, visual gravity.
Also called visual weight.
Yep. It's our tendency to feel that some elements are heavier or lighter, more stable or unstable.
So bigger things or things lower down feel heavier.
Generally, yes. And smaller things, higher up, feel lighter, almost like they're floating.
Okay, just basic ingredients, how they relate. Now, what's the purpose behind using them? The intentional elements.
Right. This is about the why behind the design's impact. First is aesthetic. The style.
Like realistic, stylized, or abstract.
Exactly. Realistic tries to depict things as they are. Stylized is more decorative, ornamental, abstract is minimal, strips things down. Each style creates a totally different feel.
Makes sense. Then content.
That's simply the message or the theme. What's the design about? History, culture, science, whatever.
The subject matter. And finally, function.
The specific job the design needs to do. Is it informative, trying to teach or raise awareness?
Or expressive, conveying feelings.
Or instructive, like assembly instructions. Or, as the source notes, sometimes it's utilitarian, especially in ads, where the main function might just be to grab attention, create impact.
Okay. Elements covered. Basic, relational, intentional. That's the what. But how do you put them together effectively? That's the principles, right?
That's the principles, the how. These are like the time-tested rules or guidelines for arranging those elements. For beauty and effectiveness.
They govern the relationships between parts and parts of the whole. It's about making it aesthetically pleasing and functional.
And using them well is what helps the design actually achieve its goal. It's about creating unity from all those basic elements. That's where the elegance comes from.
So what are the key principles? Let's start with balance.
Balance. Visual stability. Controlling that visual weight or gravity we talked about, there are three main types mentioned.
Okay.
Radial balance. This is where elements radiate out from a central point. Doesn't have to be the exact geometric center, though.
Like a flower.
Perfect example. It creates that radiating effect. It's seen as a kind of advanced symmetrical balance.
Then symmetrical balance or formal balance. This is the mirror image thing, right?
Exactly. Mirroring elements across an axis, vertical, horizontal, diagonal, usually just one axis works best. It feels very stable, very common.
But potentially predictable.
It can be, yeah.
Yeah.
If not done with some flair. Then you have asymmetrical balance, or informal balance.
This is the tricky one. No mirroring.
Right. You achieve balance by distributing visual weight cleverly. A big, dark shape on one side might be balanced by several small, light shapes on the other, perhaps.
So it needs a good eye.
Definitely. A good feel for the visual weight of different dots, lines, colors, spaces. More intuitive, maybe.
Okay. Balance covered. Next.
Rhythm. This uses repetition, but crucially, with variation.
Repeating an element or motif, but changing it slightly. Size, color, orientation.
Exactly. That variation keeps it interesting, prevents boredom, and guides the eye smoothly. It's visual order creating flow.
Got it. Then proportion.
This is about the relative sizes, ratios between components and the whole design.
How one part relates to another in terms of size or visual weight or even thrust.
Precisely. And while it's often intuitive, there are some famous ratios, like the golden mean or golden ratio.
Based on the Fibonacci sequence, roughly 1 to 1.618.
That's the one. The golden rectangle uses this. Da Vinci's Last Supper is apparently a good example.
Wow. Are there other useful ratios?
Oh yeah, the source mentions simpler ones too, like 1.1, 1.2, 2.3, 3.4, etc. They can all create pleasing proportions.
Okay. After proportion.
Harmony. This is when everything just fits. Components are in complete conformity or unison.
Or that proportionate unison, maybe following those ratios we just mentioned.
Right. It can be harmony of color, shape, size, whatever. It just creates a pleasant, unified feeling.
And the opposite of harmony would be?
Contrast. Using opposite visual qualities to create interest.
Contrast in color, value, size.
Any attribute, really.
Yeah.
And it can be high contrast, like black and white.
Medium, like gray and black.
Or low, like two similar grays. Same with color. Opposites on the color wheel are high contrast. Nearby colors are low contrast.
And using contrast helps create a center of interest.
Absolutely. The focal point. The thing your eye is drawn to first. Contrast is one way to achieve it.
How else?
Emphasis making one thing stand out while other things are more subdued. Or even just isolating an element.
Making it stand alone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the last principle. Sounds important.
It is. Organic unity. This is the quality that makes a design feel utterly complete.
Like nothing could be added or taken away without messing it up.
Exactly. A state of visual perfection. You see it a lot in nature, where everything seems perfectly integrated.
Wow. Okay, so elements are the ingredients, principles are the recipe. That's quite a framework.
It really is. And when you start to see how these abstract ideas work together, it changes how you look at everything visual.
It really does underline the thought and intention that goes into effective design.
And like we said at the start, understanding this isn't just for appreciating high art. It sharpens your visual literacy for everyday things, websites, ads, packaging, everything. You start to decode why things look the way they do.
So a final thought then for you listening.
Yeah.
Take a look around right now. Pick something visual, even something simple. Can you start to see the elements, the points, lines, shapes, colors?
Yeah, and can you sense the principles at play? Is there balance, rhythm, contrast? How does it guide your eye?
How does knowing about these building blocks change how you perceive that visual world around you? Something to think about. Thanks for exploring the depths with us today.